Hello, my name is Frankle, and in this video, I'll be helping you understand the terminology that is used to describe camera lenses. Knowing this will not only help you use your camera lenses better or know what different lenses are, but it will also help you shop and find new lenses that you need without having to go through a lot of trouble. In this video, I will be displaying two camera lenses and detailing the writing and descriptions that are on them, so you can understand the writing and descriptions on other lenses. So, without any further ado, let's get started. So, the two camera lenses I will be using for this video is the Canon 18-55mm f3.5 to 5.6 IS STM and the Canon 70-300mm f4 to 5.6 IS2 USM. Both of these are Canon-made lenses, and both of them are very good lenses by my standards. So, without further ado, let's get into the information surrounding these lenses. Generally, where you'll find the lens information is usually on the front element. It'll usually be surrounding it on the edges of the plastic or metal barrier. And this is where all the useful information will usually be located. But you usually have to remove the lens cap to see it. Now, starting off, we have the lens manufacturer, the type of lens, and the mount. Of course, this lens manufacturer is Canon. It's a zoom lens, which means it has a changing focal length. And it's an EFS mount, which is made for crop sensor cameras. Canon's EF mount is the one that is made for full frame cameras, and this will usually differ between manufacturers. So make sure to check their charts to make sure which lenses go with full frame or cropped sensors, as that's usually very important to the lens's overall performance on that camera. Now, here is one of the most important parts of the lens, which is the focal length. The focal length on this lens is 18-55mm. That means it starts at the lower end of 18 and ends at the higher end of 55, which means it goes from a fairly wide angle to a usual 50mm lens, which means it's good for landscape and portrait photography and a few other things. Usually, this will always be displayed on it, and if it is a prime lens, it'll only have a single focal length and not two focal lengths. The other important part of information that is displayed on a camera lens is the aperture. As you can see, it has two numbers, 3.5 and then -5.6, which means f3.5 to 5.6. Now, why it has two apertures is because the maximum aperture at 18mm is 3.5, and the maximum aperture at 55mm is 5.6. So, as you zoom in, this lens will let in less light. Some lenses, zoom lenses, will only have one aperture displayed, which means that it has the same set aperture through the entire focal length, which means you don't get darkening during zooming in, which is usually nice. But it also means that your lens will usually be more expensive. And the one next to it really doesn't matter. You don't really need to know what that is most of the time. But that's usually what the aperture is either a 2 or 1 number, and it will usually be a decimal or a whole number. And that determines how much light your lens will let in. This part of the lens, usually at the end, has more manufacturer-specific terminology. And here it says IS-STM. IS standing for image stabilization, which is on any Canon lens that has their image stabilization built into it. Image stabilization is there to help reduce camera shake and make photos a bit sharper, and it really does help. And then STM stands for stepping motor, which is the type of motor that is used to drive the focusing mechanism inside the lens itself. So, Canon has lenses that don't have a stepping motor, do have a stepping motor, and have an ultrasonic motor, which is even quieter than a stepping motor. And they also cost more as you go up the ladder. And these terms, or the terms that are manufacturer-specific, will usually always be different per manufacturer. So, IS on Canon is not the same as it is on a Tamron lens. Tamron lens's image stabilization is called VC. And all the mounts and stuff like that will all differ across manufacturers as well. So it's always a good idea to look that stuff up based on the manufacturer if you do not understand their terminology. Another important thing to note is something that's usually on the bottom part of the lens front, which has a symbol with a circle and a line through it, and then it will have a millimeter count next to it. This is the diameter of the front of the lens. And usually this indicates how large of a filter you'll have to buy for that lens. So in my Canon 700 to 300mm 2 USM, I will have to get a 67mm filter for it. because it says the diameter of the front of the lens is 67 millimeters, and this can usually be found on all lenses. It's also worth noting that sometimes the lens information, or some of it that is on the front, can also be found on the side of the lens. Usually this is common with the base of the lens when it's a Canon lens. Also, on the base of the lens, sometimes you can find a macro rate, which the macro for my 18 to 55 millimeter lens is 0.25 meters / 0.8 feet, which is the minimum focusing distance for the lens. So that means it won't focus on anything closer than 0.8 feet. So anything a foot away or more will usually get good focus from this lens. So right here you can see the base of my 70 to 300 millimeter lens. And there are several important things on here. First is the zoom indicators, which are usually on the zoom ring, which will be the very most bottom ring of the lens. And right now it is set at 70 millimeters, so it is at the minimum zoom that this lens has. And it can be turned all the way to 300 millimeters, and it has numbers for different focal lengths in between and 300 millimeters as well. And also, you will see the little screen at the bottom. This, on this specific lens, is a LCD screen that displays data from the lens, like camera shake, and it also displays the current focal length, and it can also display the focusing length, which will usually be on other lenses as a set rotator that is built into the lens. And that is usually important for telling how far you're focusing, or if you want to pull infinity. The last thing you need to know about your lenses are the buttons and switches. Usually, if a lens has an electronic camera connected mount, it'll have an autofocus or manual focus switch. And if it has image stabilization, it'll have a stabilizer switch, which the name of it can differ between manufacturers. This one is a little bit more complicated than most because it has the LCD screen function, so it has a mode button that enables you to interact with the screen. And depending on how complicated your lens is, it'll usually have more or less buttons and switches. The general is either 2 or 3 though for most general lenses. Now the final part is what to actually search for when you are looking for a lens to buy. Usually you will want the manufacturer, the focal length, the aperture, and any special things like the version, like 1, 2, or 3, and if it's image stabilized or not. Usually when you're searching for a lens, those are the main components that you will put into the search engine, and you will get the most accurate results. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll get back to them as soon as possible. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to see more content from me in the future if I make more of these. Thanks for watching.